Welcome to another episode of Spiral Theory, Understanding the Body Through the Forces of Nature. I'm your host, Shila LaGrue. Let's start discovering.
Welcome to another episode of Spiral Theory, Understanding the Body Through the Forces of Nature. Today, I have a dear friend and colleague, Brunella Lucci, all the way from Italy to New York to Florida, with bodywork for many, many years you've been practicing. And even more of our connection is with Paul St. John. You were with him for years before he even codified his technique. So you observed it happening along the way and side by side with him. Not only that, you're for many years, you were his therapist. You're who he goes to when he needs it. So we have a lot of experience in this person here. And aside from neurosomatic therapy, Brunella has studied cranial sacral therapy, myofascial release, the John Barnes method, now Barral Visceral Manipulation. We're in the course together. We've done OOV trainings together. You've done a Pilates training and also lymphatic drainage. So I think all that's interesting because there are all these different ways of how you touch the body and how you inform the body with your touch. And we'll get into that a little bit. But I'd love to hear just a little bit about what got you here today, right here sitting in this chair.
You. Well, the body is an interesting object. You can never run out of facets from which to approach it. So you can see things completely different after you have thought that you would got a good grasp of maybe could be posture or the way to read what's happening with somebody, with the body, right? So everybody have their perspective of looking at things, their background and experience. And so I just wanted to have a little piece of different ways because there's no shop that only has one tool. So, but definitely the work that I did with Paul formed me. And I've always thought that was just the best choice I had made, ever since, maybe in my life, but ever since I came to the States and ever since I became a therapist. It was such a great privilege to be mentored by someone who's such a pioneer in the field of soft tissue therapy, and I learned my basics.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You were already a massage therapist before you met Paul?
I was already a massage therapist. I graduated at the Swedish Institute in New York, and I was working happily in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that first kind of contact with seeing the body in a new way was with Paul. Like you got your massage training and then you met Paul St. John and he said, well, I have this chart that I use, right? Is that how it was? Was it already formulated?
Not quite like that, because at first Paul used to teach. I know that you met Paul when everything was just nicely formatted and fantastically formatted. We all would have wanted to start like that, but at first, all Paul knowledge was coming through in pieces, like segments, shall I say. Weekend seminars. So his program used to have five seminars, and then it became 7, they became 9, but they all would contain a little bit of intro to posturology. So the Friday evening would be posturology.
Yeah.
So, and that's all there was to posturology. And
just one evening, huh?
Well, we would try to apply. Paul would try
throughout the whole workshop.
Would try apply through the workshop, but there's a massive amount of material, and you know yourself that it takes so much more exposure.
Oh my gosh! Because I used to teach posturology, and that was a whole weekend when I was teaching it. So just thinking that you only had Friday night,
that's Friday night.
That's a cram,
and it was filled with like all these principles, all the principles,
all the
physiological laws,
yes.
and then the charting.
Wow.
So it was difficult. That's really why Randy and Paul came to the conclusion that to really allow a therapist to truly have it in their understanding, in their hands,
it needs to be a whole course in and of itself.
It needs to be repeated, like within a school, a program where every day you do some, and every day you have questions that get addressed, and so you finesse it.
Yeah. And just so for those of you who don't know, posturology is a system of charting that Paul St. John created that is very detailed, and it's using like 85 or so bony landmarks. It includes the pelvis and the cranium, and looking at how they relate to one another in terms of what your treatment plan will be. We measure standing, sitting, and supine. And if some of the measurements are different from standing to supine, that gives us indications of where to go. And since a lot of our talk today is about visceral manipulation, one of the things is if it changes from standing to supine, the measurement that is, then we were taught to look at the organs in that case.
Further later. I mean, at first, it took a while for Paul to develop that teaching the organ. I mean, I'm sure he was studying it and observing it for many years prior to the time that he came out with the whole seminars. But so at first we didn't really have the visceral.
And so I think, you say how valuable it was for me to get his information in a nice package, but I almost think what you got to see was even more valuable because you saw his wheels turning. You saw him try something, and if it works that many times, then he's going to share it. It's like his own way of, the scientific method, so to speak.
Yes. No, it was an unbelievable experience to work with him. He had already developed the main seminars. Actually, when I arrived, I think he was working in completing the Atlas axis, which got him so fired up because there's so much that you can change just by only addressing, excuse me, that part of the anatomy and physiology, right? The brain stem with all the nuclei, with all the cranial nerves that influence all the functions in the body.
And how proprioceptive it is up there.
Yes, exactly. So he was, that was the time when I joined, and it was a pleasure to work with. We were in a lab and see every patient was a revelation. So there was a lot of learning, lots of learning to do. But of course, as for a therapist at first, I mean, when the school Center for Neurosomatic Study came out, I had a little bit of envy, thinking, oh my goodness, they have it all like laid out. Everything makes sense with everything else. And Paul shows and come to the class.
Like we had the curriculum, we had the manual. You didn't have any of that.
Exactly. Yes. So, but no, it was fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
I'm really happy to have chosen this career. I always say that I'll never, regardless, even if I did not have any need to provide for myself, I'll never retire.
Yeah, I feel the same.
How do you retire from learning and keeping your brain interested, your mind interested in there's so much more to discover. And plus we're stuck with the having to learn more, because the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know, right? So
it's just never ending.
Everybody brings their universe, that is so filled with aspects that you may not have considered up until the previous patient. It could be emotional. It could be just psychological. It could be just non-visible, non-chartable.
Now, this is huge, what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
So I started my career as an artist before I was a therapist. I was a dancer, and I shared a lot of rehearsal time and space with actors. So I went to Juilliard, and on the third floor, it was all actors and dancers. So I got to observe the actors all the time, rehearse and come into their character and do some physical techniques of physical acting. But what what struck me is in order for them to come into a character, it wasn't just their voice and how they're, projecting their voice. It's their bodies. They were embodying a character. So that comes back into what we're looking at in our, clients when we're looking at their postural issues and their structural patterns, that maybe it's not just a tight muscle, that they have embodied an emotion.
It's the way they hold themselves.
The way you hold yourself and the way you allow the stressors of life to filter through you or not, because they also could get stuck. And in a way, that's what we're working on.
Yes.
And the more I learn, because it seems like my the path of my education is going from gross to subtle. So the more I learn in the subtle realms, the more I'm like, what are we working on?
Yeah.
What are we working on? Are we working on tissues?
Exactly.
Like what space are we holding to get someone to let go? Is it just a trigger point? Is it more than that? Is it the way we use our voice and let them feel like it's a safe space to relax? Is it just giving them those 10 minutes of, I don't have to worry. Let me just let my whole body drop onto this table. I don't know. It just gets to, and then now with learning the Barral method and what we have in store for us in level VM5, Visceral Manipulation 5, where Brunella and I have only taken Visceral Manipulation 1, so we're total novices. But once we get to VM5, what I've been told is that we are learning the emotional resonance of organs and how to detect that.
Of organs, but the whole
the whole body.
Of the whole body.
Correct.
Of the whole body. And yesterday, Dr. K, I saw for an hour for a session, was explaining how Dr. K is a teaching assistant at Barral seminars, was explaining how during VM5, yes, you learn how to discern different levels actually of the of the energy space, on the energy layers. Let's just say right now, I'm just trying to relay what I understood. And there's a level which is only maybe 10 centimeters from the body, and another one at 30 centimeters from the body. So I just can't wait to get to that, because to have even such a dissection of the
here we are focusing from the skin in,
yes,
but now they're opening up the door 10 centimeters away, 30 centimeters. What are we working on?
So, and it's teachable. So you're not saying, okay, someone who is a reader, like we call Jean-Pierre Barral a viewer. What do you call it?
Yeah, I mean, I always say clairvoyant.
Yeah, that's what I meant
he's
to
like
say.
clairvoyant.
Yes, for them, okay, but to that, get to a point of like make it such that you can teach it or make it available,
teachable, repeatable science. It's repeatable. I've been saying it's literally the juncture between physical treatment and what people would consider woo-woo, like into the energetic world. But it's at that juncture because we're still able to almost quantify what we're feeling. And that's why I love this approach, because I've done Reiki trainings. I've done a lot of studies in subtle realms through yoga, chakra work, but this is definitely science. We are looking in anatomy books. We are getting to the root of the problem, which might be the edge of a joint or a tiny little vesicle that's so small you would never think. But that's the level of detail that they're honing in on with this method.
It may seem like a woo, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, actually, he measured it. Yeah. He measured all these level of invisible energetic fields, right?
Right. And our equipment is able to measure it more and more with more capability now. So Dr. Joe Dispenza is also something we have in common.
Yes.
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is one of his bestsellers, but his work is beyond. He is also a scientist, and he's a chiropractor, and he loves to observe. So in his seminars, he is hooking people up with electrodes at the height of their most intense meditations and seeing what the brain is doing. So he's gathering a lot of data. And whether it's seen, unseen, barely seeable, we're observing. And if we have something to observe, we are definitely in the realm of the physical still. Yes. You know what I mean? So it's like It's definitely that, to me, that juncture, because everything that I've done so far has been just gross body, like let's make changes. Then we go into the organs, and now they have courses in the Barral method, the joints, the brain work, and the fluids, all the vessels. So I remember once in a dissection, in Gill's dissection, I can't even believe I asked myself this question, but I'm working with the scalpel, cutting away, and I asked myself, are we in all of this? Is who we are in all of this? Like every layer and all these tissues and all these, and the answer is yes. We are in all of this.
It is.
So it gets more and more and more subtle, and then you need a microscope and it gets even more subtle than that. And we are in every layer of that, 30 centimeters away and beyond, which just goes to show how connected we are. But this is not new information. This is ancient wisdom also of our energy fields and our layers. They call them koshas in yoga. All these, our energetic layer, our physical layer, our mental layer. So as therapists, how lucky we are to be working with people that intimately.
Yes, it's a constant journey, right?
It's a constant journey.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Even John Barn, who's another mentor that I've had indirectly, because I haven't studied directly with him personally, but I have studied with his closest and highest trained therapist who run his clinic in Sedona. Even with him, I mean, the exposure to his teaching, which is still new. I've only been studying with him for maybe a year, but just really dove deep in it. Because I wanted to go to Sedona and just see how it's done and how it's received. But he talks about, how much it's much the learning and the focus is often too much on the rational, intellectual aspect, which he calls Channel 5, versus discovering more about our intuitive aspect. And I'm talking even about the patients, clients, intuitive aspects of themselves. And so I just really appreciated that take, of things, and the fact that, he's just saying that our healthcare system and even our schooling is all focused on this Channel 5, intellectual learning. And, he was saying we are an intuitive being. Apparently neuroscientists have discovered that there are 10 million more data available on the intuitive side of humans,
right?
Than
the conscious, right?
10 millions versus one of the intellectual, but yet we focus on the learning, and the schooling is concentrated on that little amount,
right? And
so even Dr. Joe addresses his students as geniuses, because even him says, we're geniuses. We have this incredible endowment on the intuitive realm that is where the healing really happens.
Yeah, and so the Daniel Vedetta gets into that too, the inventor of the OOV. He talks about the subconscious mind versus the conscious, and we are basically hooked into teaching and learning on a conscious level, which can only hold so many bytes of information. And so what he wants to impart on us is to make it playful, so we get into the subconscious realm. And so when we're so focused on doing it right and where do I put my body, it's like that part of our brain can only hold so many bytes of information. But if we're just having fun and putting ourselves in a state, a little more parasympathetic, a little more playful, a little more childlike, that's when our body can actually hold more information. Like you said, it's like 10 million bytes more bit of information. I mean, something unimaginable, but that's the realm that the healing takes place. And all of our great teachers are saying the same thing.
Well, John Barnes is highly convinced that love is the energy that flows through those fascial tubules, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you release fascia, you bring not just the body back to homeostasis on a physiological way, but all the other realms.
In the emotional way.
You can just heal what's part of the whole, you know, and not just the little, like, where you had that issue or
right.
So
because it's like we only feel a symptom usually in one or two places, but it is the whole that is off, so to speak. It's not just these one or two places. And even the ancient wisdom of yoga, they talk about our yoga practice burns samskaras. And what they say samskaras are the units of our like emotional history embedded in our bodies. So when we practice, we're burning that up, and we get to clear ourselves to be that pure essence of, we could say, love once again, and not be riddled with all these bits of history that keep us tight and tense, and like the actor getting into his mode. You know, we don't have that still in our tissues. So in a way, that's what we're working on. We're not just releasing trigger points. We have to get the body to align in a way that it heals itself. And that's kind of an ongoing mantra as well with all of our teachers, that we're actually not fixing or doing the healing. We're providing the atmosphere and the space for that body to do its magic.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, because we're not healing other people. We heal ourselves. I mean, Paul used to call himself an environmentalist. You know, he's an environmentalist, not doing the healing, but providing the environment for the person to actually do their own healing from the patient, right?
I absolutely love that. That's
I identify with that as well. So I thought it was a great way to explain to people, because when you say, oh, I'm a healer, oh, you're a healer, you almost like feel like not empowering, not just losing the ability to be the one who really has their health and their healing in charge of their own, in their own hands, you know. But no,
right. Yeah, and I remember
provide the environment for it.
Yeah, I made a switch in my mind when I was a young beginning therapist, that I felt like from my training I was taught that we can correct everything. You can fix it. You can correct everything. But so then I had this kind of egotistical idea that I can do this. But then over time I started realizing that it's not all on me. Like, it's like getting that body in the situation where it can heal itself. And not only is it not on me, but it actually it's a joint effort. It's a co-healing. And even though, let's say, I'm the expert with knowing the attachments, you know, it's definitely the dance between the two people. And that's what healing touch with real hands with an alive body that's warm is different than a gun, a thumper, a ball, like all these tools, a foam roller. I love it. They're great. But when you have a human touch, it like, if I had to put an illustration to it, it would be like little lightning bolts between your hand and that body.
Oh, if you had the right kind of vision, you would see it. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about our entrance into the Barral method of visceral manipulation. So we came from a superstructural point of view. So we came from Paul St. John's work with all these bony landmark measurements. We then furthered our interest with scoliosis and spiral theory and what's going on when we have these torques and turns within the body. But I just have to say, for me, it was a relief and actually validating to hear Dr. Ron Mariotti, when we just took our listening course with Barral method, that the organs and the structure are very closely related. And that makes so much sense to me, especially if we call these organs almost like the hub of a lot of the emotional holding, and how the sac of what holds our organs in place, the peritoneum, they actually attach to various places within our trunk. It could be a diaphragm or rib. They're anchored here and there. And if we have a little pull, we could be massaging muscles all day long, tendons, ligaments, muscles, and miss a hugely important piece that's pulling the structure out of alignment. So I'm super excited personally to dive into more of how the organs are affecting the structure. What are some of the things that are making you excited? Since we're just beginners, we just are getting our toes wet in this technique.
Well, it's a little challenge. It's been challenging because, I'll talk for myself. I've been gearing my feeling, my learning, my listening to a much firmer, obvious, like gross, if we want to call it, type of touch versus this infinitesimally light and small connection where you are talking about going at 15%, 30%, 50% depth in the body without changing the weight of your hand on the person. So you're doing that travel with your knowledge of anatomy that is necessary. Then they recommend that you acquire the more and more, and invite you to bring the manual, but the
anatomy
the
books.
atlas, the atlas constantly, because who knows all the vessels, all the ligaments, all the structures that hold an organ in place, in every single part of the body.
To that level of detail.
Exactly, we'll acquire it. But so that's definitely a challenge, but at the same time is fascinating because we could feel.
It's such a different way of feeling. And when Brunella was talking about going down, down, down into the like deeper percentages of depth into the body without our hand actually digging that deep, one thing that struck me in Ron's course was his conversation about the negative and positive force fields and how it's very much like a magnet, and how let's say that the problem, the lesion in the body is in a positive field and our hand is in a negative field. So it literally is attracted to that. And so in the listening course, which is an assessment tool in the Barral method, it's using your hand to find where the problem is through the hand. And it's almost like putting your consciousness in your hand. Because in the past, the consciousness was in our eyes, in our measurements. So our tools,
Right.
Now we're putting our consciousness in a feeling of attraction. And that's a whole new concept for me.
Absolutely.
And it's one that might need some time, will need some
It
time
will
to
need
develop.
some time, and also, I thought it was on one hand, I find relieving the idea. I mean, knowing that you don't have to, once you acquire that ability to really feel and trust what you're feeling, you don't have to figure out what's going on.
Right.
The body knows.
Right.
That's what they say. The body knows. You cannot. You don't have to see where to go. You just have to learn how to feel where to go.
Yeah.
And then there are different steps that you can follow to inhibit, and just that way you can be sure,
more
and
precise.
more precise.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually Dr. K was saying that, and when you get to those higher level of learning, you don't even have to touch the body to do an inhibition. You can just do it in the field. So we're talking about, okay, it's I know it's not voodoo, because
Right.
I see results are there, and people who are doing it are scientists.
Yeah.
There's tremendous amount of data. There are papers. There are amazing brains involved,
Right.
and there's more and more. I think Justin, the coordinator of the course, announced at some point during the class and listening
Justin, right.
that there's an amazing increase of investment in energy medicine, and therefore, that's what energy medicine is. Energy medicine.
Where did he get that information?
He did it during. He told us during a class announcement.
Yeah, that he read somewhere.
Or did he get that information? I think he mentioned that, but it was on an economy maybe magazine. I think.
And it's that. Plus, I'm hearing a lot about sound healing and vibrational healing being the new wave of the future. That here we are again, from gross to subtle. Here we are working with tissues, but how much you can change tissue from a vibrational standpoint. Mm-hmm. So that's really, we have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, and how to combine it with what we know. So that's, challenges are never short of challenges, but that's how, we can keep interested in and bring more results, for ourselves, for our family members, friends, and for our clients.
And who I keep thinking about too are animals. Like how much animals would benefit from visceral manipulation listening, because when they're sick and hurting, they can't tell us. Mm-hmm. And there are veterinarians in the course, because he had mentioned that at the beginning. There are no vets here. Remember, he was asking where we all came from. There are nurses, doctors, chiropractors, naturopaths, physical therapists, or a lot of them, massage therapists. So this field is attracting a lot of different walks of life. But those animals, like how wonderful to be able to help an animal through listening techniques. So I'll give a short example of because I volunteered my body to be a demo in the listening course. So I'll just give a short example of what I went through. So the general listening is placing the hand on the head and feeling where the tension goes, how deep in the body, what quadrant it's going. So then you can further investigate. So with my hand on the head, it took me to the back. Mm-hmm. So that means the next step would be to go down my spine, at least with the very detailed way he was teaching us. So then I was the demonstrator, and so Dr. Ron was going down my back. I mean, I was the demonstrator as a patient, but he was going down my back, and what he found through all my different places that were drawing him is that it all honed into my upper right quadrant in my back. And he went with the depth, 10%, 20%. I forgot how actual what percent it was, but it went straight to what he thought was the bronchial. He said, this is a bronchial issue. And the thing that struck me is with that assessment, that I think if he wasn't demonstrating would have taken 5 minutes, right? It took a little longer because it was describing everything. So with that really quick assessment, he found a place on my body that from when I was a child was extremely sensitive. Like I remember that I only have like 2 places in my body I remember as a kid feeling like an issue, because luckily I didn't have a lot of issues as a young person. But that was one of them, to the point where I couldn't even get a haircut without feeling extremely ticklish in this spot. And I just felt like to hone in on something that I am so sensitive there. And of course, I always thought it was tight tissue, like muscle, because that's my realm, like muscle. And then maybe my lung, because we learned some visceral work with Paul St. John. So like maybe some lungs, some erector spinae, some, intercostals. But he went right into the bronchial tube. And when his hands were on me, he did not treat me at that moment. I wanted a treatment, but he didn't. Mm-hmm. But when his hands were on me and he was just talking to the class, and I felt like he was engaged with my bronchial tube, I literally felt like there was a tube about that long, right where he was touching, that was making itself more obvious as tubular and the length of it. Like I felt like he was highlighting it, that he was spot on. I just felt like that was spot on. So of course I was dying to get my bronchial tube treated. So I asked you to treat it that day.
Actually, so that's what actually happened.
That's what happened.
We did that testing. I mean, I was just really practicing some hand placement, and you started to just relate things that were happening.
So we haven't learned that area of the anatomy yet in visceral manipulation. But I said, Brunella, let's just play around. And we were out of town, so we were staying in the same hotel. So she put her hands around my bronchial tubes, one above and one below. Of course, we don't know exactly what we're doing because we weren't taught this yet. But can I just say, it really felt like you were doing something. You knew what you were doing. You were connecting with that structure. Luckily, we already had the assessment, so we didn't have to figure it out.
Our higher selves knew.
Something new.
Yeah, our higher self knew what they were doing, I'm pretty sure.
And it really stayed relaxed for a long time. It just started coming a little bit back, but it actually, from the work you did and like that assessment, it really, that stayed softer for a period of time, even though it wasn't technically a treatment that we could say, since we haven't learned the technique yet. But that's what's amazing. Cool about the listening is that it's called listening. But this assessment is not just an assessment, but it's also somewhat of a treatment. So when you can engage with the structure consciously and let it kind of lead the way in the release, I feel like that's more valuable than knowing all these different techniques. And that's why I chose to do listening right off the bat with the Barral, the way they have the module set up, because you can take 1 through 5 visceral manipulation without doing listening. And we had a couple girls in our course
that was good too.
that did that. And they told us, you're doing it the right way. You're learning listening right off the bat, because you're not allowed to take listening until you take VM1. So I went visceral manipulation 1 straight into listening.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really where all the good information is. If we keep practicing that, then we almost won't need to know specific techniques, step 1, step 2, step 3, because ultimately the body, the person on the table's body is doing the work.
Yeah.
Which is a whole different perspective. It's like a 180.
Oh, yeah.
Here we are thinking we're doing the work.
Exactly. No,
it's really putting it into the client's hands and bodies.
No,
so
it's pretty cool. That's just understanding it all is just
it's almost hard to understand.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I'm hoping that I can get all the things that I see my instructors able to do.
So anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up? Anything that ties in maybe what you're working on with visceral work and maybe the way you see structure?
They can never be, they can no longer be ever one apart from the other. Now, even if maybe at times I used to maybe feel like, okay, we'll use the viscera when things don't line up. But, well, no, and now it's just so to intertwine is really, such part of our emotions, which is a huge part of our life. The Oriental ancient medicine calls the abdominal area Tantien, which is the ocean of the emotions. And so it's kind of hard to put it aside, so it's always now part of that observation and awareness. And although I still feel like I'm at the beginning of that type of experience, I understand there's a lot of consciousness about that because of all that we've traveled so far, right? So it makes it's a new excitement added to the way I look at my patients.
Yeah.
So
yeah, in the past when I would see, let's say like a very round rib cage, in the past I'm going through all the muscles that I need to get into, including diaphragm and things that might be a little harder to get into, maybe not just a trapezius. But now I'm literally picturing, why is that liver over there? Because if the rib cage is over there, the liver's over there. making that liver want to go that way? So it's an interesting piece to bring into the puzzle, and it might be key as I start to learn more and develop. I'm thinking this might be more key than just an interesting piece.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's amazing to see how small an amplitude a visceral stretch has and a huge ramification.
Yeah.
Compared to my idea of stretching something,
Right.
Stretching your body parts. I mean, there's definitely a lot more. I used to think much more excursion to just stretch that structure. But when you have to stretch like a ligament, the falciform ligament, within the liver, it just takes a minimal amount to stretch, and then the body maybe takes you to a motion that it does just naturally. You just have to non-inhibit it,
right,
and follow it,
right,
and recognize it.
And that motion that happens, I think they call it induction. Mm-hmm. And since we're so new, I have to say, when I have a couple people I'm practicing on, I'll say, "Are you doing that?" And they'll say, "No." "Are you doing that?" "I thought you were doing that." "No, I thought you were doing that." And here we are practically dancing, and like neither of us are doing this. So what's doing it? It's the organ.
That's why I'm saying recognize it, because, like you're saying, you just think that it can't happen. I mean, it's just
one of us is doing
applying that force, but there is an energy there.
There really is. And these body parts are screaming to be aligned and taken care of. And I just feel so fortunate to be part of a healing journey with someone in this very intimate way. I mean, this is more intimate than it gets, I think, dancing with someone's energy like that. So, gosh, I feel
you're
so
holding
lucky.
their body and they're just letting go, or just not even know that they are letting go. So it's definitely an interesting chapter that we just started.
I feel so lucky that I have you as a study buddy, and that we get to walk this path together.
I feel
and
the same.
Keep practicing on each other, and keep opening our doors of new ways of seeing the world. We have so many mentors. We mentioned so many today. Paul St. John, John Barnes, Daniel Vedetta, and now Jean-Pierre Barral. I mean, these are the greats that are informing us, and hopefully we can take that work and continue to practice it in a very pure way, and continue to discover, and then hopefully the people that are inspired by us will carry the torch.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We're so lucky.
Yeah,
Aww,
we are.
This put me in a great mood. Okay, I guess we'll wrap up for today. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brunella, for sharing your thoughts and your history and who you are.
It was a pleasure.
Good. Yeah. So we're here, and we're learning. So